Hello, and welcome to Beyond the Deal, where we discuss business, entrepreneurship, and commercial real estate. My name is Lacey Labs, and I'm here with my co-host, Laura Martin. In today's episode, we spoke with Micah Davis, mortgage loan officer with Fidelis Mortgage Corporation. Micah is also the director of development for Greenlight Operation, a local nonprofit combating human trafficking in Central PA. Micah's background is in commercial banking and finance, and he has also served with other human trafficking nonprofits in the area. Tune into this episode to hear more about Micah's work, the real estate finance experience that he shares, and his passion for helping the victims of human trafficking. Micah Davis, welcome to Beyond the Deal. So great to have you with us.
Thank you. Great to be here.
Yeah,
yes.
Awesome. Let's start with you just telling us a little bit about yourself, your background in your work and your personal life, and anything you want to share about who Micah is and what you do.
Sure. So I guess a little bit quick about my family. So I married to my beautiful wife, met her actually in banking, which we can chat a little bit about. And then we have 6 children ranging from 21 years old down to 3. So we have a very busy house. Yeah. We enjoy doing a little hobby farming on the side. And work-wise, so I had 21 years in banking. That's kind of where I got my footing. Jumped into that very early on, right out of school. Loved it, had a great career in it. But truly, as the years unfolded, found my niche really in the residential lending space, and hence where I am now. So I'm with Fidelis Mortgage. Been there about a year and a half, doing residential mortgage lending and loving it. So, yeah.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
Awesome. What kind of drew you into banking? You said you started pretty early out of school. That's amazing to spend 20 years in that. What was the pull that got you into that and got you started?
You know, honestly, this is going to sound comical, but I think it was just I needed a paycheck at the time. Truly, I don't think I would have ever said that I saw myself doing anything in banking. Mm-hmm. But I am a true people person. I love building relationships. And as in most things, that is so key and so important in banking. That's very true. So as I was stepping into that, I really grew to love it. Getting to know new people, experiencing new things. Everything was different every day. Mm. So for somebody who doesn't want to sit still and be bored, I think that really is what kind of kept me there. At some points, I would say I felt like I was maybe going to die in that, honestly. And I really did love it. I can't say anything bad about it, but just kind of morphed into what I knew was my true passion, which was really the lending side of things. I think you get a greater understanding of who you're working with, and you get to focus on building that relationship even more as you get into the weeds to help people achieve, whether it's home ownership or helping them with a really difficult situation. So,
and are you born and raised here?
No. So I am a military brat. So my dad was in the Marines. So we moved, probably 15 places by the time I was 10. Wow. And we were going to be redeployed to Okinawa, Japan. And I'm one of 4 boys. And my mom was finally like, hey, pump the brakes. We need to stop shifting these kids around. So my dad was able to take early retirement. We had a lot of family here in the central Pennsylvania area, and it just seemed natural. So we moved here when I was 10. So I would say, yes, obviously the greater part of my life. And I do love this area. So
you're one of 4 boys, and then do you have 5 girls and 1 boy?
You're correct. Right? Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah. So shifted that dynamic. Yes. So for my mom, who never got to pamper girls, she's like living her best life now. So
they're nearby. That's nice.
Yes. Yeah.
Well, that's right. Because we met at church.
Yes.
And your dad was working there at the time.
Yeah. Yeah.
Was the business manager.
Yes.
I think.
Correct.
Big church.
Yes.
Yeah. And then I knew you through banking.
Yeah.
So where did you work in your banking career?
Yeah. So I started off initially at Waypoint Bank, which became Sovereign, which is now Santander. And then, as you know, banks are just gobbling each other up. So then I was able to do a bank startup in 2005, help be a part of that with Greystone Bank locally, which was a wonderful experience.
Yeah.
Yes. Cool. Yeah.
So you were there. Okay.
Yeah. So did that, worked through the Susquehanna Bank merger, the BB&T merger.
You survived all these.
Survived all these, yes.
That's not easy.
And then when the initial founding team for Greystone came back and did the Link Bank startup, I was able to go with them and do that again, be a part of it.
How long ago was that?
So that was 2018.
Okay.
That was founded. And that's where I stayed and finished out my banking career.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow. And Fidelis is local?
Fidelis is local. So our home office is in Lancaster.
Okay.
And then we have an office here in Camp Hill. I have two partners that I work with there, Angie Shaw and Jess Regan.
I'm not familiar with that company, but I don't do much residential work. But
yeah.
Do you do your closings in-house? Like you have a closer?
We do have our own title company, but then we'll also obviously go with whichever title company the brokerage is using as well to do the closing. So
Very cool.
Yeah. Super cool.
Yeah.
So I think most of our listeners probably have an idea of what residential mortgages are, but just in case we have some who don't, or if you want to give any insights into some of the details, especially in the current market of what it looks like to get a residential mortgage. Tell us a little bit more, more technically, like what it is that you do in the someone buying a house process and how your lending and loan officer role plays in.
So I spend most of my days working in the first-time home buyer space, which I love to do because that's where you're really watching somebody make their dream come true with whether it's a young new couple or I have a woman right now that I'm working with who's in retirement and she's ready to buy her first home and she's never done that. So it's really cool to see that play out. But conventional lending, which is kind of like your standard 30-year, 15, 20-year mortgages that you see most people talk about. VA loans, so working with our military veterans. And we are veteran-owned, so we're really proud of that. And then FHA. So, we have all the products and services, but kind of what my day-to-day looks like. If I have an initial intake with a client, the process has not really shifted even given the current market. I would just say time is really what's of the essence because people are moving quick and we still know there's very low inventory. So take their application, get them pre-approved, and then have them off and running with their agent to look for homes and then really just working that file through to completion, getting it underwritten and getting to the closing table once they're under contract. So it's not a hard process. I think a lot of people are they kind of look at it and it can be really smooth. There's no reason why it needs to be difficult. So,
that's probably people's biggest purchase in their life.
It is, yes.
It's emotional and stressful. And
it is, it's a big choice. You're totally right. So it's really cool to be a part of that. Yeah. So really trying to catch a lot up front to make it as seamless and easy for them as possible. Don't let them feel the pain. So,
it's the key.
Yeah.
How do most people find you? Is it word of mouth or just past relationships?
Yeah, a lot of referrals just from having been somewhat in the industry, even though the seat looks a little different now on the bus. But then I try to network with a lot of realtors locally. So building solid relationships with them so that they know that I'm a trusted resource when that next opportunity becomes available. Yeah.
So you can do anything in Pennsylvania?
Anything in PA, yes.
Okay.
Yes.
And I know that, and I don't know if these numbers are right, but I've heard there might be 100 commercial agents, but there might be 2,000 residential. So you have a big
there's a
pool
big pool. So I think one of the most recent statistics I heard is that there's actually 30,000 realtors at any given time in the state of PA.
In PA.
So
my 2,000, I guess, would be through GAR, the Greater Harrisburg Association, which is what I'm thinking.
Yes.
Or maybe Central Pennsylvania. I don't know. I wonder what that number is. But
30,000.
30,000. That's crazy.
There's a big pool of agents to work with, which is great.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah. It's business for everyone, I always say.
That's right.
There's enough. Yeah.
That's right. Yeah.
So what are some of the key factors that someone wanting to buy a house should be looking at for themselves as they go through a process with you to get approved? What things are you saying, hey, here's the top 5 things I need you to bring to me and then you kind of need to be in place for us to be able to start the process?
Yeah. So initially application, which that's pretty easy. We'll take care of that. credit quality. So, I mean, just trying to help people really understand and manage and have realistic expectations of where their credit scores and their credit report needs to be at the time of approval. I think also debunking the myth of down payment, because so many people still to this day, as I'm talking with them, are like, well, I don't have the 20% to put down, and helping people understand you don't need 20% to put down anymore. So, and that looks different if you're a first-time home buyer or a reoccurring buyer, but chatting through that with them so that they're positioned well to handle the down payment, but also understand they don't need that huge influx of cash that originally they may have needed. And then just managing their debt load, their current debt load, working through that and seeing where that's falling. And really just kind of getting that payment in line with where they need it to be. I'm a firm believer in having that conversation with every buyer of where do you want to purchase at? What price point are you thinking? But also realistically, what can you really afford on a monthly basis? Because my job, I think, is to advise people. Well, there's a lot of lenders who are happy to pre-approve buyers for the sun, moon, and stars, but it can really position them for not the best situation. So managing their debt to income and keeping it in line. Yeah.
Awesome. And so just out of curiosity, what kind of interest rates are you seeing? Like snapshot of, obviously this changes constantly, but like right now, June 2024.
Yeah. So I would say, for June of this year, I'm happy to say we can still keep everything for the most part really in the sixes, high sixes, but that's where the market is if you look across the board. But yeah, and that's all forms of financing really. That's that would be VA, FHA, and conventional. So trying to keep those expectations realistic.
And you guys are independent, so you work with numerous funding sources, numerous different banks or entities or...
Yeah, so we're a correspondent lender, which is slightly different from a broker in that we do fund all of our own deals at the closing table. And I personally, I think, feel like there's a huge advantage to that because we get a little more control over underwriting and closing there at the table. So if something does start to go a little sideways, which will happen from time to time, we can jump in on that and put out the fire and keep things moving. Whereas broker, you're truly handing off right up front at the table. So kind of a little different, but we do work with numerous investors. So we still have that competitive edge that a broker would have to go out, shop rates in the market, check where all of our investors are, and really give our clients the best product. Yeah.
So as a correspondent company, do you guys kind of specialize in getting the mortgages signed, and then do you sell them usually?
Correct. Yes. Okay. So we do have everything packaged and sold even prior to closing. So we know which investor we're going with, so that will kind of have that handoff. But it's nice you can already share all that with your client prior to closing, so they're in the loop. And it's the best of both worlds, I would say. So
it's different than the commercial world where you have a lender, but even in my own homes, it seems like they package them and sell them, and it's interesting. I mean, how often that can happen.
Yes.
I think the one time it happened like 3 times in a year. It was crazy.
Wow.
I'm like, I'm not sure who's got my mortgage. I don't know how to keep it straight with all the different things. The other thing I learned after I did it, of course, was in one of the houses I bought, I did not escrow taxes and insurance. And I didn't know this afterwards. I wish they'd told me, but they said that they actually charge a higher interest rate for not doing that.
Correct.
Which you think would be the opposite.
Yeah.
But less work for them.
Yeah. So in the mortgage world, we would call that an overlay. So different investors have overlays in their rate for different stipulations. So yes, if you choose to not escrow taxes and insurance because it's considered in their eyes higher risk because it's now in the borrower's hands to make sure those items are getting paid, there is a rate premium for that. So,
It is fascinating. I used to have flood insurance, and they did just take it away, but I had signed up directly. And then next thing I knew, it was like escrowed in my mortgage. I'm like, I don't even know how they communicated, but it's just funny how some things happen.
Yes.
So
Yes.
it's a full-time job keeping track of it all.
I totally get that.
Yeah.
Interesting. So before we move on to other things, because I know we got some other fun things to talk about. But what advice would you give to someone looking to buy their first home? As you said, you work with first-time home buyers a lot.
My favorite.
Your favorite, your specialty.
Yes, I do
What
love
advice do you give your clients then, or people who are looking to work with you before they come to the table?
Yeah, I think, just getting educated, like reach out to a trusted lender, reach out to a trusted agent, because those are truly going to be your two partners through the process. Have the detailed conversation up front. Communicate clearly what your goals are, make sure everyone's on the same page. And honestly, beyond that, the rest is just transactional, but that's really where the real relationship happens up front. So having those detailed conversations so that we know what it is you truly want and want to accomplish in this process. And then we want to help you do that. So, yeah.
So once, residential is just what I've personally done. But once you're pre-approved, which I think is new with the tight market of low inventory, how long does it take to close typically?
So, I mean, on average, the majority of closings are a 30-day closing. We have some where, because maybe the seller needs to hang on to the property a little longer, you could have a 45 or 60-day close. We're still seeing a few of those. I would say they're more few and far between in this market. But I mean, we've done closings in 3 weeks. I actually did a closing to bail a buyer out this year in 1 week. That is not the norm, but they had a fall through with their other lender, and it didn't make sense why they couldn't get them to the closing table. So we kind of scooped that file up and rushed it, which was great to be able to help her with that. Because talk about being stressed when you feel like you're supposed to close on the home. She found out 24 hours prior to closing that closing was not going to happen.
Wow.
So to be able to come in and help with that, that was rewarding. So yeah.
That's so interesting.
Yeah, that really is.
Wow.
Wow.
Okay, so in addition to your work in real estate financing over the years and lending, you've been pretty involved in some nonprofit work, specifically around combating human trafficking in Central PA.
Yes.
And you've done that in a few capacities, I believe.
I have.
So tell us a little bit about that, kind of what drew you into working with that particular type of nonprofit, and what different things have you done? What are you doing now?
Yeah. So without sharing too many of the details, just to kind of protect those who would be a part of the story, but I do have somebody really near and dear to me who was directly affected by human trafficking and is a product of that. So honestly, very early on in my marriage with my wife, she and I both knew that we wanted to take on work combating human trafficking. And we were pretty unsure of what that looked like. So for years we were praying about that and just kind of waiting. The timing was not right either. And then finally that door was opened a few years ago. So initially I worked with an organization that was focused more on an international level, combating human trafficking overseas, and I was doing development work for them, helping to raise awareness, grow funding, all the above, you name it. But then just this last year, back in November, I actually joined Greenlight Operation with a great friend of mine, Jordan Pine. She started that organization in 2018. So our mission here locally in the central Pennsylvania area is to combat human trafficking through a couple strategic initiatives. So a big one being education, because the first way to combat something as horrific as this is to educate, create awareness, because there's so many people who still tell me locally, oh, it doesn't happen here. You don't know what you're talking about. This only happens overseas. They've seen the movie Taken, and that's what their reality of trafficking is. And that's just not the case. So we do that, yes, through the education. We do some legislative work. We work training cops locally. And then most exciting, I guess, for me, I would say, is the restoration home piece. So that's an initiative that we're working through finishing up our capital campaign for, and a couple projects which we're very near completion with to open our home. So we will be the first residential home for survivors of human trafficking in Dauphin County. And I'll leave it at that just because we need to protect the address. But so the most or the closest one, I guess, up till now is really Lancaster area, but we have such a need. So really looking forward to that.
I had not heard of this nonprofit before, and Lacey was involved in it and mentioned it to me.
Yeah.
And then we made the connection that you were, because I knew you through banking, commercial lending, that you were involved. And I'm one of those that really doesn't know much about it or almost finds it hard to believe. So do you have any statistics that you can share that will kind of educate some of us that probably a lot of us don't know a lot?
Yeah. I mean, I won't go into like nitty gritty details, but just to kind of give you like a high level overview. So we're super excited to be partnering with the Dauphin County Human Trafficking Task Force. And that's something that our executive director has played a really large role in. And we've really appreciated their partnership. But just to shed a little light. So before that was founded in Dauphin County, there was, I believe, 3 human trafficking cases that were open at the time. And since the founding of the task force, they're now working 150 open cases currently.
And what does that mean? An open human trafficking case? That means someone's missing?
No, so it doesn't mean they're necessarily missing, but they've come forward and either shared that they are a victim of, or we have encountered a survivor who will file that report, or there's a perpetrator that has been noticed, and they're actively working the prosecution
in Dauphin County.
In Dauphin County, yes,
wow.
And the surrounding counties. So Cumberland County is working on getting their task force up and going. But I mean, this is something that looks very different than the movies. I guess we'll go back to that. So for those who are not aware. So I think everybody's idea is they're taken overseas and they're locked in dog cages. And yes, this does happen, but more locally, we're seeing it in school systems. So there's kind of 2 definitions to human trafficking, and we specialize specifically in commercial sex human trafficking. So for anyone who's a minor in that industry, it's any exchange of goods or service for a commercial sex act. Whereas with any adult 18 or above, there has to be force, fraud, or coercion also accompanying that. So we're seeing kids in schools where they're saying, hey, so-and-so, if you go to the bathroom and do X, Y, or Z with so-and-so, I'll give you free prom tickets, or I'll give you this pair of sneakers. Well, that is trafficking because there is an exchange of goods. So as we're speaking in schools and educating teachers, all of a sudden we have people now coming forward going, oh my gosh, I've seen this is happening with so-and-so in my class. And it's sad. But I'm also super thankful that we're seeing way more of an awareness now and schools locally willing to let us come in and talk. We're speaking in churches. We're speaking in civic groups. I mean, even just something like this, being able to share with those who watch the podcast so that they know a little more and walk away a little more educated.
Yeah, a little more aware. What kind of crime is that, I guess? Like, what would they be charged with? Like, it is a trafficking charge. So it is recognized now. So that the charges are going to fall into the human trafficking thing. So there's labor trafficking and there's sex trafficking. So it just depends on which situation we would be talking about as they're caught and apprehended and being prosecuted. So is it federal if it's across state lines? Is that?
It could be. It definitely could be.
Okay. And you're finding that they are prosecuting them and...
Absolutely. I think,
they're not being let free like you see.
No, we're very fortunate that we live in an area now where they realize the need and they are being very proactive, not reactive. So, yeah.
I think I've heard, like maybe you told me that the quarter we live in is a pretty...
yes.
heavily affected area?
Yeah, so Central PA as a whole, part of the beauty, if you will, to those who are traffickers is that we have this intricate interstate system. So they could be right here, but they could very quickly be to New York. They could be to Philadelphia, Baltimore. And then there was an article in the Dillsburg Banner, because I'm a Dillsburg resident last year, where there was a woman who was caught as a trafficker. She's working from her home with a woman in Russia, and they were working to transport women in and then transport them down to like the Miami area, I believe it was. So it's right here in our own backyards. Yeah.
I think it kind of hit our office last year. There was some articles in Penn Live about a case that came out that several commercial properties were being used as kind of salon, massage parlor kind of places. And I think it was a federal case where someone was the ringleader and had, services being offered. And that whole thing was kind of pretty public in the news. And we looked at some of the addresses. We're like, we know these properties. We drive by these properties. We know some of the agents who've been involved in these properties. Like, this is crazy. Like, you don't think about all the different industries that it touches, but it's just kind of this question of like, well, how do we make sure that when we're leasing a property to someone, you know, that we aren't leasing it to someone who's got a criminal record in something like this? Or, what are some of the signs we can watch for if we're having that kind of interaction as an agent or staff person? So it did, you sort of see the closeness to home when it touches like someone or a property or somehow it's like, oh, wow, that's... didn't expect that one.
Yeah. And I think, Lacey, to your point, like the sting operation that happened last year where they were going into the massage parlors locally and found out that they were definitely encountering victims of human trafficking. Sadly, there's not a lot of legislation in the realm of like these spas. So we're working with local legislators to try to pass a little more aggressive legislation around that, because some of those spa owners that were busted that day turned around and within 3 weeks they were open again.
Right.
So we need to change some stuff at the top to really crack down on that. And I think to your point, or to your question, Laura, too, another huge form of human trafficking, well, the biggest form is familial trafficking, which is so sad because this is where the mother, the father, the grandmother is trafficking their own child, their grandchild. Maybe there's a substance abuse issue and they need funding for that. So they find this as the only way. But this is why it goes unnoticed so many times, because this is somebody trafficking their child right out of their home. So we're not going to see it in broad daylight. And when somebody has been manipulated so much mentally to step into being a victim of human trafficking, they're not going to come out and blurt it out. They're just trying to live their normal life as they're out and about. So you're encountering these people at the grocery store, in your schools, in your churches. I mean, we've had, as an organization, we've actually had somebody come forward in a seminar that we gave in a church here locally and say, everything you described tonight is my story. I'm being trafficked. And oh, by the way, my trafficker is right over there and he's with me tonight.
Oh, geez.
So how do you navigate that now? I had somebody come forward at a panel discussion that we were a part of just earlier this year and say, hey, I have to be honest, my wife, who is now deceased, was trafficking my daughter for years, and now she's still stuck in this lifestyle, and I don't know what to do. So it's so sad, but that's why it goes so unnoticed. So to be aware, that's why I tell people all the time, know who you're talking to. You've got to really get to know people before they're vulnerable enough to share with you what's really going on.
So what can people do to help?
Yeah, we're combating a $152 billion industry. So it is the largest criminal industry now. And just to give you some context around that, that is greater than annual revenues for Walmart, Apple. So funding is huge. and obviously as a fundraiser for Greenlight, I'm not just saying that, but I mean, truly to combat an industry of this size and bring it down, we do need funding. We need funding to finish up our homes so that we can house survivors of this terrible crime, and really help them through the road to recovery. Because shelter care is one of the biggest gaps right now that we have. There's so many who are looking for placement, but there is truly just nowhere to go. And then, I mean, just support. We have service days. We have groups come out to do service days with us. We love doing that. Volunteers. We have some great events throughout the year. We have a big 5K on City Island every year. And we have our gala every year in the fall that's coming up in October. So if you're interested in attending, feel free to reach out. We'd love to have anyone at that. It's a great way to learn more. One of our hopes this year is to really have a lived experience expert speak at our gala. So it's so interesting to hear some of those stories, but also see somebody who has come through it on the other side, and is walking out life.
Well, you guys had a team for the 5K, right?
Yeah, a few people at our office ran the 5K this year. My family ran it last year. My son ran his first 5K ever, was the Greenlight Operation.
Love it.
It was a big deal in our household.
How long have you been involved with Greenlight?
So I was actually on the founding team. I was the communications director for the founding team for just the first year. I had a few other big obligations hit my plate when we hit the year mark, and I had to say no to something. Sadly, it was Greenlight that had to go at the time, but I've always stayed connected to the organization, and I've always admired Jordan's passion. I met Jordan when she was a college student at Messiah, and she's a go-getter.
She does not think
when she gets her mindset on something, she doesn't let it go. And she's put a ton of work, not just into Greenlight, but into educating all kinds of people across Central PA. And I've seen her passion really turn into something that's meaningful and has had a huge impact. And that's been really, really cool to see. Yeah. So, I would say my involvement's kind of ebbed and flowed.
But you're still passionate about it.
Absolutely.
You love talking about it. And
absolutely.
Trying to support the mission. So the website would tell
greenlightoperation.org.
How they could donate.
Yeah, and you can donate, right? We have a donate tab right there that you can donate through. We also have an events tab, so you can watch for some of those key events coming up. We'd love to have you present. And and I mean, reach out to me too, personally. I'd be happy to have a conversation.
So your primary role is fundraising?
Director of development. So that's fundraising. But also, I mean, I'm super passionate about the education piece too.
Yeah.
So love just getting out, even things like this, being able to chat with people and helping people realize how prevalent it is here locally. And working with our volunteers, that's also a really good time. So I love doing all of that.
Yep.
Thank you for sharing about that.
Of course.
Yeah, it's a hard topic.
Yeah.
Yeah, it is a tough topic. And we'll link Greenlight Operation in the show notes. So if you're a listener, you'll be able to find all that information. We'll make sure it's all easily accessible to everybody.
Thank you. Yeah, that's great.
Absolutely. So Micah, thanks so much for being on. Thanks for sharing about all this. It's really meant a lot. We have a closing question that we ask every person who's on our show.
Yeah. No matter what.
No matter what.
I love it.
Age, what they do, doesn't matter. And this will kind of jump us a little bit back to career. But our question is, if you could go back and start your career over again, right, from the beginning, but get to keep all the knowledge and experience that you've had, right? What would you do differently? How would that knowledge kind of guide you? What would that look like?
Yeah, I would say, I don't know that I would do anything differently, to be honest with you. There's been bumps in the path. There's been really smooth times, but I think through that is how you really learn and grow. And I don't know that I would want to go back and give my younger self everything I have now, because I think it can actually stunt your learning or cause you to be stagnant. I believe this with my own kids as I'm raising them. Like, I want to help train and equip them, but I also want to see them mess up and give them freedom to do that and learn from it. So, I mean, I've loved what I've had the ability to do. And yeah, I don't know that I would change it, truly. It'd be great to have the knowledge, but I don't think I would change some of that because you have to walk that path out, I think.
Yeah. Yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
Is there any advice that stands out, like that you would give to your younger self because of your knowledge, maybe? Not that it would necessarily be about changing the path, but more just if you were just speaking to someone younger. Like,
yeah, I think don't be afraid to learn new things. And I was not a learner when I was younger. In fact, I would have told you I hated it. Honestly, I never enjoyed school. It's just the truth. I really didn't. But now as I've been doing it longer and I've aged a little bit, I'll be 40 this year. I've seen the importance of it. And don't be afraid to learn. Don't be afraid to try new things too. So yeah. And do something that you're passionate about. Why would you want to die in something that you're not truly driven to do?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Love that.
Yeah.
I feel like we should be asking you like parenting advice.
Oh gosh. I don't know if that I've done my fair share of messing up there too, but it is a blessing to raise them. So yeah.
You have a beautiful family.
Thank you. Thank you.
Well, thank you so much for your time, Micah. It was really great to have
my
you on.
pleasure. Yes, always good to talk with you both.
You too. Yeah. Thank you.
That was Micah Davis sharing his insights on real estate finance in Central PA and his work with human trafficking victims. For more information on Micah, Fidelis Mortgage Corporation, or Greenlight Operation, or to learn more about SVN Latus, click the links in the show notes. Thanks for listening to Beyond the Deal.